See your own faults. Oh, learn to make the world your own. No one is a stranger, my child. The world, it's yours. The world is yours. You see, my child, oh, it's not that you won't face dangers. Troubles always come, but they don't last forever. You will see they pass away like water under a bridge. If you want peace, my child, don't see the faults of others. See your own faults. Oh, learn to make this world your own. No one is that stranger, my child. The world, it's yours. The world is yours. Open your grief-stricken heart to the Lord. Sincerely pray, O Lord, draw me near to you. Do this constantly, and you will attain peace of mind. I am the mother of the wicked, as I am the mother of the virtuous. Never fear whenever you are in distress. Just say to yourself, I have a mother. If you want peace, my child, don't see the faults of others. See your own faults, oh, learn to make the world your own. No one is a stranger, my child. The world, it's yours. The world is
fully vaccinated, prasad, boxed prasad, or a mask. And then next Sunday, Swami will go with Rama's instructions to Shabari. Okay. It's just the letter.
When the shadows love, it seems so far away. Only take me to thy bosom, Lord. Let me forget all else but thee, all else but thee. When in doubt, I vainly seek to find my comfort, Lord, in those things that pass away, in those things that pass away. Only take me to thy bosom, Lord. Let me forget all else but thee, all else but thee. All else but thee will pass away, my Lord. Like the dew in midday sun, like the dew in midday sun, and when the dewdrop shivers brightly low, let me remember the brighter one, that brighter one. Oh, my Lord, don't let me wander from thy shining light. It's just a fall of fireflies. It's just a fall of fireflies. Only take me to thy bosom, Lord. Let me forget all else but thee, all else but thee. All else but thee will pass away, sweet Lord. Like the dew in midday sun, like the dew in midday sun, and when the dewdrop shivers brightly low, let me remember the brighter one, the brighter one. Good morning. Wow. Great to see everyone again. It's been quite a while, actually. It's funny how old things can become firsts again in life, as round and round we go. I have quite a few things I want to talk about, quite a few things I want to be able to share, and I keep giving forms of this lecture over and over and over again, trying to touch that thing that I want to express that has inspired me so much in it, and it's just amazing. It's somehow in the translation from thought to speaking or words or lessons that it somehow just flattens out and always sounds so ordinary and so much the same. And so I'm going to try again this morning to, to open hearts, to remind us, to inspire us, just to be, to realize, to spend and enjoy some time in the presence of the beloved, and to know and in a real and active way that God is greater than all of this, bigger than all of this, that the truths of spiritual life are more real than your hands, that the experience of the beloved is more real than your own thoughts, closer to your existence than your deepest and most treasured ideas and beliefs, so that we can live in the kind of joy, the kind of bliss that so many that have gone before us have found and have touched in their life, that we might come to the realization of our purpose, of the very reason that we exist, the very reason that we suffer, the very reason that we carry on in a life day after day after day after day after day for many, many years. We count that lucky if there's many, many years. There's a poem by Hafiz, of course. He says, "If one is afraid of losing anything, they have not looked into the friend's eyes. They have forgotten God's promise. The jewels that you get when you meet the beloved go on multiplying themselves. They take root everywhere. They keep mating all the time like spring-warmed creatures. The burglars, those who would steal them, hear watchdogs inside of his gifts, and they run." This promise, the poets always point at it so beautifully, this presence of the beloved, and how large and how beautiful, how worthwhile, how everything it is. And what a strange experience this life is. I have to say that the years of spiritual practice and struggle and trying to, somehow copy at least the smallest things from the lives of the great saints has really taught me that life is inexplicable, this experience of being so strange, so unresolvable. You cannot know its nature. You cannot grasp or contain or describe what it is. And the more you look at it, the more odd it becomes. Each one of us sitting here this morning, we're all experiencing at this moment the same set of conditions, the same set of circumstances. And yet we can go around the room and ask, how are you doing today? And every one of us is going to have a different answer. And that seems intriguing to me. I grew up in a family, I have two brothers. All three of us grew up in the same conditions, the same parents, the same house, the same everything, just one duplicate after another. And yet the three of us could not be more different as individuals, truly, than any random people in the world. And that's an amazing puzzle to me. And I could never quite comprehend why that was. But Vedanta has kind of given at least a clue to it in saying that we live in a mind. We don't live in a world. If we lived in the world, we're all watching the same news. We're all walking on the same streets. We're all doing the same things, eating our meals, going to bed roughly at the same time, waking up roughly at the same time. Our routines are not so very different. And yet, our experience of life is radically different. So the condition of your mind is fundamentally important to the understanding of the nature of this experience. We have to realize and come to know that the mind is where we live. And that's changeable. That's not written in stone. We don't have to suffer the karma that is stored there. We don't have to subject ourselves to the smallness, to the insecurities, to the pains, to the struggles of life to the degree that we suffer. But it's because we're running along trying to figure things out, which I had this beautiful experience one time in New York City. I was in a park with somebody in this room, and we were sitting there, they were napping, and I was just watching everything that was going on. And it was a springtime day in Central Park in New York City. And what an amazing scene that was. There was everything being paraded in front of me. God in all of his outfits, all of his costumes, all of his desires, all of his inspirations, all of his pains, all of his loneliness, all of his friendship. Everything was there. There were families having picnics. There were college students playing croquet. There was musicians singing songs, dancers dancing along, people sitting alone and contemplating, people sleeping. There was everything happening there. And I found such a lovely mood in that space and such an appreciation for us as people that knowing nothing about what we are, knowing nothing about the nature of this experience, just thrown into our experience as a body and growing up and making it all up, literally cobbling together anything we can for meaning, for dreams, for inspiration, for optimism, for hope. And I looked out and I saw all these people knowing nothing. And I felt such a bravery inspired by them, such a courage to get up in the face of nothing, to get up in the face of pure ignorance about the nature of being, and yet cobbling together a dream, cobbling together a hope, cobbling together something worth living for. And in that finding love, seeing people holding hands, seeing people holding babies, seeing families sitting together, seeing friends laughing. And it gave me such a beautiful appreciation for brotherhood, for sisterhood, for oneness, that we're all together in this. And that we can reach something meaningful, that even in that absolute ignorance, there is some light. But it's our confusion that drives us around. Apparently, Swami Vivekananda was going to write a book somewhat about this, and there's a list of notes that he had made that we found in his notebooks. And he just listed out some of the ideas, I guess, for his flow of thought. And I'm going to share some of them because they speak to this. One, he says, we do not or cannot see the painful parts in objects. We are charmed with only the pleasurable portion, and thus grasping the pleasurable, we unwittingly draw in the painful. And this is where we sit. This is where we lie, in our ignorance, in the fact that we don't have a knowledge or understanding of what we are. We see something shiny, something bright, something flash, something that reminds us of something that we know to be true but can't quite figure out why, something that draws us to itself. And we go and we pick it and we pick it and we can't quite understand why it didn't last, why it didn't give us what we were looking for, why it didn't fulfill the way it seemed to promise that it would when it was sitting in the store window, or when he or she was sitting across the classroom from us before that first date. We can't seem to understand, why didn't the marriage work, or why don't my children love me, or why am I not happy with the 5 cars that I own? All of these things we don't understand. And he says, that we constantly get caught in this cycle. We find these desires in this world around us, and we keep trying to grab something that's not there. Why? All the way back to the first idea. We live in a mind. You can't eat a thought. You can't hug an idea. You can't sleep on a philosophy. This world is only a thought. It's a dream. Some say an illusion, some say an ignorance, some say a misunderstanding. But what they're all saying, you can't eat it. You can't live here. You can't find what you're looking for here. It's a mirror. And desire, this tantalizing, sparkling, beautiful, singing, phantom that always is there. We see it as an object, a thing. We grab it, we'll have it. And we just keep running. If one doesn't work, it's the next one. I always think of poor Elizabeth Taylor whenever I think of this. I apologize that I always bring her up in this light. But after 8 husbands, you thought you would get the idea that it's not going to work. What you're looking for is obviously not there. It's not going to go. It's not going to give you what you need. Don't pick a 9th. Learn from your experience. That's all discernment is about. That's all discrimination is about, is opening your eyes. It's not projecting a truth. It's trying to glean a truth, trying to glean an understanding, to break the cycle. Because desire is not a point. It's not an object. Desire is a loop. It goes in a circle. You go buy that fancy car, it's going to be real nice for a few couple of days, and then it's going to become ordinary, and then it's going to get old. The new model is going to come out, and you're going to be right back up at that 0 point where it's you need to come up with the money for the next one. Every desire is like that. Every desire loops you around from 0 to 0. And if you build a life on that, you're going to wake up in your 40s probably at some point and think, what is this? What is the point of all this? Why am I running along, just playing along? You know, I've become a tree from which money is harvested. You know, more and more in our society as things get more and more capitalistic, more and more materialistic, people are starting to feel like that almost as a fundamental idea. They've counted the number of steps before you're going to want a Starbucks. And oops, there's a Starbucks. Wow, amazing. They've counted the number of ideas that you're going to have until you need that new computer or you need that new whatever. And we walk around, we've become trees of money which are regularly harvested. And we live in an environment that's developed for that convenience. You know, oh, they'll drive this many miles before they're going to need a hair salon. They're going to wander this far in this many days before they need, you know, again, their Starbucks or their restaurant or their new clothing or whatever. And we can't have them keep their clothing for too long because then we wouldn't make enough money. So let's change the style. Let's change the style this summer. Oh, you can't wear those long shorts from last year. This year you have to get these short shorts, you know. Oh, you can't wear those shoes anymore. You got to wear this. Or we have the people that are sparkling all of these desires in front of us, the celebrity. You can't wear the same dress twice. You have to go out and buy a designer model for $40,000 and then you just basically have to throw it away. Can't wear it again. And we get caught in this idea. We get caught in this idea of just being materialistic, physical entities who are regularly harvested for whatever it is we have to give, as someone else is playing the same game that we're playing. How do we get out of this? How do we find our way to something authentic, to something real? I don't think there's any accident that those are words that are showing up in the common slang these days, being authentic, being real, keeping it real, because we're all looking for something that touches us, something that's deep and something that's dependable and something that lasts. In volume 7 of the Complete Works, Vivekananda says, time is the eater of everything. It comes and all has to go. Why try to improve the earth, to paint the butterfly? It all has to go at last. Do not be mere white mice in a treadmill, working always and never accomplishing anything. Every desire is fraught with evil, whether the desire itself be good or evil. It is like a dog jumping for a piece of meat, which is ever receding from its reach, and dying a dog's death at last. Do not be like that. Cut off all desire. Cutting off all desire, that's enough to run you out of the building immediately. When you sit there and think, what? How in the world does one go about doing that? How do you get rid of all desire? And if I get rid of all desire, what do I have to look forward to? Why have Christmas? Why have any of these holidays? What's the point of anything without desire? But he goes on, he says, at times we vainly hope that in our case, only the pleasurable will come, leaving the painful aside. But he says this never happens. We're not a special case. You're not going to get what you need from outside. Because outside, in reality, is just your mind, your interpretation, your understanding of the world that you live in. You can't find anything out there. In the Gita, when it tells you the soul can't be burned, it can't be wetted, it can't be hurt, it can't be all these things, nothing can be added to it, nothing can be taken away from it. It's not philosophy. He's talking to you where you sit right now. You can't add anything to yourself. You can't give out anything of yourself in that sense. Because you are a spirit, you are divine, and your thoughts can't feed you. And everything in this world is just a thought, just an idea, just an interpretation. So he says, give up this vain hope, this notion that it's just the wrong car, it was just the wrong person, it's just the wrong job, it's just the wrong family. Give up these ideas and understand that it's not out there. That's why everything is disappointing you. It's not that it's a bad person. It's not that it was a bad apple. It's not that it was the wrong idea or the wrong thing at the wrong time. It's that there was nothing there but your own idea of what it was and what it would be. Stop hoping in things. Stop hoping in activities. Stop hoping in achievements to fulfill you, to bring you up. Look at the world and see it as it is. That's discernment. Again, it's not a pretense to make our religion true or to make our ideas true, our philosophy come to light. The philosophy is because of the truth of the experience of living. You cannot find it out there. Don't spend your life looking for it. Understand that. Get it now. And then hopefully the rest of the lecture will tell you what is in its place, where to go from there. He says, not only do we vainly hope for these desires that somehow don't come to a fruition, don't give us any kind of lasting anything, he says our desires themselves are constantly changing. They're constantly changing. So you're living in a constantly changing world, in a constantly changing mind, with a constantly changing set of desires, and we wonder, why am I not fulfilled? Why am I so tired? Why am I so worn out? How come things have lost their luster? How come I'm not feeling that inspiration anymore? You know, after 40 or 50 years, you come to that place, and at that time, you've got to make a decision about it. You either got to stop or you just turn yourself off and just become that automaton. And in old age, grow bitter. Because in your old age, you're not going to have any of the energy or any of the belief or that youthful vigor to go hunting, to go find what you want, to go get what you need. Your body, is going to melt. Not going to be attractive anymore. You're going to get tired at 7 p.m. A night going to bed and reading a book is going to be more attractive to you than all the colors of downtown with the nightclubs and the flashes and the songs and the singing and this amazing world of celebrity that's dangled in front of you. At some point, it's going to be far away, and you're going to be left with yourself. I've mentioned many times, I'll mention again, my friend, who most of you know, Bill, he's an elder care person. And he had this opportunity in San Francisco to take care of a very, very wealthy member of society, probably one of the top wealthy people in San Francisco. Took care of them, and they owned multiple homes. And the home they happened to be in was one on Billionaires Row, they call it, in San Francisco, in Pacific Heights. She was completely disabled in her old age. She was limited to a single bed in a single room of a single home. So the symphony hall, which was named after her, she couldn't go there anymore. Couldn't go to the symphony anymore. This big 5-story mansion on the hill, she couldn't even get to the window to see the view anymore. Now, why would the divine put us in a situation like that if any of those things that she had worked for and earned and found and come upon in her life weren't meaningful, weren't going to be available to her? Can we learn from that? Can we see something in that? Does God just want us to lay alone in the bed at the end of our life, broken, without hope, without inspiration? Because that seems to be where material life takes us, where it leads us. What happens beyond that? He says our desires are constantly changing. What we would prize today, we would reject tomorrow. The pleasure of the present will be the pain of the future, the loved, the hated, and so on. The future is only an extension of the present, and such a thing cannot be. Cannot be. This cannot be the end-all, the purpose, the meaning in this life. It can't be. You are not doomed to that by necessity. You can choose it by not discerning, by not paying attention, by not learning the lessons and acting accordingly. You can go that direction. You can test it on your own to see if it's true. And that seems to be the mindset of many in the world today. I'm doing it myself. You can. Or you could read some honest accounts and learn from some honest individuals who have already died, who have already lived the whole length of life and tried everything that you think you're going to try. And you can learn from them. And they can give you clues. And there's a handful of them that found something beautiful, found something peaceful, something fulfilling. He says, as a final death knell, or final nail in the coffin, as they say, he says, death is the goal of all objects. Change is the nature of all objective things. That's just a nice way of saying everything has an expiration date for you in this world, which is why desire is a loop, which is why it just takes you right back to where you started without having gotten anything except a lesson that you may or may not pay attention to. There's a parable that is told in the Gospel of Holy Mother. He says, a barber who was passing under a haunted tree heard a voice say, "Will you accept 7 jars full of gold?" The barber looked around and couldn't see anyone. The offer of 7 jars of gold, however, roused his cupidity, and he cried out, Yeah, I'll take 7 jars of gold. That'll be awesome. So at once the reply came, "Go home. I've carried the jars to your house." The barber ran home. Boy, I imagine he ran home. The barber ran home in hot haste to verify the truth of this strange announcement. And when he entered the house, he saw the jars before him. He opened them and found them all full of gold, except the last one. The last one was only half full. A strong desire now arose in the barber's mind to fill the 7th jar also, for without it, his happiness was incomplete. He therefore converted all of his ornaments into gold coins and put them into the jar. But this mysterious vessel was, as before, still only half full. This exasperated the barber. Starving himself and his family, he saved some more money and tried to fill that 7th jar, but the jar remained as it was before. Does this sound familiar at all to you? I'm going to share something, it's sort of a confession, an admission certainly of ignorance on my part. But you remember when we got those checks from the government a year or so ago, that $1,500? I got one of those, right? And of course, that for someone in a monastery, that's enormous. That's huge. And I remember that feeling that came over, when suddenly your bank account, which normally has somewhere between $0 and $25, suddenly has like $1,500 in there, and you don't want to touch it. Suddenly I caught this disease for about a week. I caught this disease where it was like, oh, 1,500. If I could just get to a floor level of 2,000 and never spend below that 2,000, then I'll always have that to do something with, to get whatever needs to be gotten. Right? You start thinking, I'm almost there. I've almost got what I need, but you're not quite there. So, and you see that it makes you act strangely. That this guy he converts everything he's got into gold to try and do it, doesn't quite get there. Then he starts depriving those others around him, his own family, to try and get there. Do you see what money does to us? It turns us into misers, right? It turns us into selfishness. We start spending or not spending, collecting, hoarding, grabbing, getting more and more and more. And you can look out there at the world right now. Look at the billionaires, the 2%. Who have what now? That's something like 61% of the wealth. Which of them has retired and said they had enough? Which of them is starting to give all of their money to their employees, who are freely giving health benefits and buying them bigger cars and helping them get off the street? Who? Can you not see? You are never going to have enough money. You never are. You will never reach that plateau. I've got enough. You'll work yourself up to the top 1%, and you'll be miserly and mean, because that's how you get rich. Generous people don't get rich. It's impossible. The jar remained as before. So one day he humbly requested the king to increase his pay, as his income was not sufficient to maintain himself. Apparently he was the king's barber. Now the barber was a favorite of the king, and as soon as the request was made, the king doubled his pay. All this pay he saved and put it into the jar, but the greedy jar showed no signs of filling. At last he began to live by begging from door to door, and his professional income and the income from begging all went into this insatiable cavity of the mysterious jar. Months passed, and the condition of the miserable and miserly barber grew worse every day. And this goes back to that woman that my friend worked with. She was so bitter and mean, he said. And he said that in her environment he understood, because he said that he would be in one room, cleaning her up and helping her maintain. And he would go into the other room, and he said there would be her family, some of her kids. And he said he overheard so many of their conversations were about how much longer do you think she has? And already dividing the furniture, already fighting over who was going to get this house and who was going to get that house and who was going to get this bank account and that bank account. How is it going to be divided up? That is the nature of this material world if you identify yourself with it and think that something out there is going to give you something in here. You're going to reach this level of desperation. He's, of course, painting an extreme here to get the point across, but it's just a matter of gradation. Take a look carefully at your own life, and you'll see elements of this already forming if you are taking that direction. You'll see that it's already taking your attention away from the people that you love, that you're working a little bit too long, you're staying away from home a little bit too often. You'll find little by little that this will steal your life and take away the beautiful things that you already have. Seeing his sad plight, the king asked him one day, "Hello, when your pay was half of what you now get, you were happy. You were cheerful and contented. But when I doubled that pay, I see you morose, careworn, dejected. What is the matter with you?" He puts his hands to his mouth and he looks at the barber and he says, "Have you received the 7 jars?" The barber was taken aback by this question and replied, "Your Majesty, who told you this?" The king said, "Don't you know? These are the signs of the person to whom the yaksha consigns the 7 jars. He offered me also those same jars, but I asked him whether this money might be spent or was it merely to be hoarded. No sooner had I asked this question than the yaksha ran away without any reply. Don't you know that no one can spend that money? It only brings with it the desire of hoarding. Go at once and return the money." The barber was brought back to his senses by this advice. And this is hopefully, the role of our spiritual life, to bring us back to our senses as we get caught in these little desire loops that take us a little bit further each time from the contentment and the peace and the love and the fulfillment that is within already. That silent, patient, quiet you that you have ignored for the dazzling, glittering calling of a material world outside the senses. The barber was brought back to his senses, and he went to the haunted tree and said, "Take back your gold, O Yaksha." And the Yaksha replied, "All right." And when the barber returned home, he found that the 7 jars had vanished as mysteriously as they had been brought in, and with it had vanished his lifelong savings as well. Those who do not understand the difference between what is real expenditure and what is real income lose all that they have. If you are in your nature, according to those sages who have seen the truth, a divine soul that can't be harmed, can't be rewarded, can't be taken away from, and can't be added to, then what are you collecting? What are you building? What are you begging for in this life? If you cannot have it and cannot hold on to it, Nachiketas tells us that death is the best of teachers. Why? Because all of this will become plainly clear to you on that day, that moment, when life is going to take a different form. You're going to go through an amazing transition, and you're going to have to leave everything that you treasured behind. Take that as a teacher. Know that this moment right now is all you've ever had. Are you happy in it? Why not? Yesterday I did a 2-minute vlog with just that thought. If you're not happy in this moment, what is your mind telling you that you need? What is your body telling you that you need? And is it any different from what it's told you in the past? And in this moment that you have right now, the demand that your body and mind make of you, can you fulfill it right now in this moment? Because it's all you've got. If you can't do it in this moment right now, right here, and find happiness in this moment now, it will not give it to you in whatever other moment, which doesn't exist, that you imagine yourself to be in tomorrow. You are always here, and you are always now. And if you are not content here and now, the scriptures are telling you there is nothing you can add to yourself or take away from yourself to change that. So what do? You go inside and sort through the mess you've made. What story is my mind telling me that I'm depending on for my happiness or my sadness? What story is my body telling me upon which I am building my idea of happiness and contentment? And if it's a story, it's about changing. And if it's about changing, we know from our beloved Thakur that it is not real. And if you're living on a story that is not real, the wonderful truth of that is you can drop it right now. All the requirements that the mind is giving you, all the demands that the body is making of you, it's your choice to invest in that by believing it's you, or just letting it make its noise and putting your eyes back on that peaceful, quiet, content, loving you that those people who love you most see, and that these great luminaries have loved. A man cannot see God unless he gives him his whole mind. The mind is wasted on lust and greed. Take your own case. You have children that are occupied with the theater. The mind cannot be united with God on account of these different activities. As long as there is enjoyment, there will be the loss of yoga. Furthermore, bhoga begets suffering. It's your own chasing after desires that creates the suffering you endure. That loop of desire, the bottom half of it is always the payment that you have to make for the top half of it. This world is a zero-sum game. You can learn that from physics. It's a closed, you cannot create matter, you cannot destroy matter. It's a zero-sum game. Your desire doesn't add anything to you that it's not going to take away from you. That's the nature of it. What is more is money itself becomes a source of trouble. Brothers can live happily, but they get into trouble when the property comes to be divided. Dogs can lick one another's bodies. They're perfectly friendly, but when a householder throws them a little food, it turns into a frenzy. So you see, that's the real nature of things. Did you ever see that movie? Oh boy, what's the name of that? Something of the Gods, where that Coke bottle falls out of the plane. Remember that movie? There's this tribe that, as the mythology of the movie goes, there's a tribe that has found perfect contentment. This community, everybody's happy, everybody takes care of each other, everybody works for everybody else. The tribe is going on beautifully. They share everything. And then this person in a private plane flies over and throws a Coke bottle out the window. And this Coke bottle comes down and it lands, and one of the tribesmen finds it as he's out hunting. Well, it's a unique object that there's only one of. And he brings it back. They don't know what it is. It's beautiful. The sun glints through it magically. It obviously comes from the gods. And it's good for everything. It can hold water. It can pound rice. It can grind corn. It can do all of these things, and there's only one of them. And suddenly all the peace and joy of that tribe is destroyed. Everybody's fighting over who owns the bottle. And so the movie goes on because one of them decides that the bottle has to be given back to the gods, so they have to go to the edge of the world and throw the bottle off. And that's the rest of the movie. You get to see it there. But you see, here's the truth from which that movie comes. Here's the truth of it. That these things that you desire, these beautiful, useful things, no doubt, but they cannot give you what they promise, because they only exist in the mind that you call the world. They're just an idea. They're just a thought. He says in volume 7 of his complete works, Swami Vivekananda, learn to help without pitying. To attain liberation through work, okay, to be active in this world, to go ahead and build the life that you're building, to live the life that you're living. He says to attain liberation through this, join yourself to work without desire. Again, we've got that tall order. Without desire. Don't bring it along. Looking for no result. Such work leads to knowledge, which in turn brings emancipation. To give up work before you know leads to misery. Work done for the self, capital S, gives no bondage. Neither desire pleasure nor fear pain from work. It is the mind and the body that work, not the eye. First, huge clue. That is so weird. What do you mean the mind and body work? I don't. That's your first piece of homework as a spiritual aspirant. Study your inner world to find the truth of the statement that there's a you that exists before mind, before thinking, before the body, before the story that has become the personality you love so much. That there's a you in there that presupposes all of those things. And that you is free. That you is content. That you is made of pure love, pure intelligence. It is the thing that understands the thoughts of the mind that it watches. It is the thing that understands the nature of the body that it observes. But there's a chasm between that self and the mind. There's a chasm between that self and the body that cannot be touched, that cannot be crossed. You cannot hand something from this side to that other side. Your body can't give itself its pleasures, its excitements, its joys, its indulgences. It can tell you about them. It can let you feel them, let you experience them, but it can't reach across that chasm to give it to you. Which means when the feeling is done, when the experience is done, that self has nothing more than it did before. And it's the same with every thought that you have and every experience you will garnish in this world. None of them can reach across that chasm to give you anything. If you're identified with the body and mind, that's a bummer. Oh my God, what are you saying? I can get nothing from life? How am I going to enjoy being here? But from the side of the self that Vivekananda is trying to help us be aware of, that's the best news ever, because it means you have all that you need already. You don't have to beg, you don't have to work, you don't have to plead. You are that. And you can trust it, know it, and sit in it, and find that equanimity of confidence that you can lose nothing or gain nothing. And that's the best thing ever. Work done for the self gives no bondage, neither desire pleasure nor fear pain. It is the mind and body that work, not I. Tell yourself this unceasingly. That's the first lesson of our guru, Swami Vivekananda. Tell yourself this unceasingly. I am not the body. I am not the mind. This is all, I'm watching it. See, if you pay attention to yourself, you can see this. It's plain as day. You are the observer of your mind. Who talks to you in your mind? When you think and when you dream, who's watching it? You're not in it. You're watching it. You're watching the whole thing. You're experiencing all of it, but you're not in it. The dream vanishes in the morning, and you're back in this one. And the nature of it is the same. Pay attention to what this whole world, what this whole experience, what your mind and your body are all implying. That you are a watcher, an observer of this grand manifestation of billions of stories of love, all of them battling, fighting, but always manifesting in their essence love, intelligence, in this grand illusion of being. Tell yourself this unceasingly and realize it. Try not to know that you work. Constantly remind yourself, pay attention and see. This is happening. This is happening. I'm not doing. I can separate myself from it and be completely unaffected by what is being experienced. And if the sages, all of them, I mean, it's certainly the direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, reading a book on Akhandananda, where he makes this so clear. He can completely withdraw himself from his mind and have a surgery, a full-on surgery without any anesthetic at all, just by removing his mind, just by not thinking about it. Chugunatita, I think, was also able to do this. Because they came to this knowledge, they came to this realization, this understanding, that this world can't take and can't give. It just is. And when you come to know who you are in it, you see the perfection of the whole instead of the imperfection of the particular, which is what the mind does. But we're addicted to thinking. We're addicted to thinking that this mind is ourself. And if I stop thinking, I'm going to be stupid. What good is a person who doesn't think? And yet the scriptures tell you that thought is just barely a fingernail's edge of knowledge. That all of the important knowledge, what is beautiful, what is peaceful, what is content, those come from a place that they call the silence. Ramana Maharshi says, all great creators, all creative people take from that space of silence and express it in the world. That space of silence is you, the content self, the full self, the loving self, the intelligent self. Huh.
So when you're talking of this concept of other reality, why don't you call it a consciousness, an awareness?
Well, you can. It is all consciousness. Consciousness is that awareness, that nature of the observer, seeing the isness of things. That consciousness is that unchanging, unaffected self, which is the same in all of us. If all of us were to take our small s self and turn it, if we were given the magic ability to turn around inside and look inward, we would all see each other. There's only one self in all of us, this ultimate self that looks through your mind and looks through your senses, looks through your body, is the same self that's doing it in this body and this mind. It has no particular, it is the universal self, the consciousness of all things. So you can use that language if you want to. So this addiction to thinking is what breaks it into pieces, right? The mind always has to break things into three pieces: subject, object, and the relationship between the two of them. That's the reason you can't realize God with your mind, through your mind. That's the reason you can't see God in your mind. That's the reason that you will never know the truth in your mind. Because the truth is one without a second. That means the other two parts are always missing. That's why the sages say that in perfect meditation, that triad collapses into that one singularity. And that one singularity is the reason nobody can tell you about it. There's nothing to describe. It's indescribable. It's beyond description. This oneness, this wholeness, is beyond description, beyond being able to be captured by a mind that needs a particular to place into a relative environment to draw that relationship between it and everything else. And your sense of I is holding all of those strings of relationship. That is why it's so important to know who you are. If you don't know who you are, none of the strings of relativity make sense. They can't tell you the truth until you know your place in this universe of relationships. Because that's all we do. We go around relating everything to ourself. Everything is related to ourself. Everything. And if you're basing it on the body, then everybody different from your body is different to you, and you will never be able to cross that gulf. If it's on your mind, everybody who thinks differently from you will be eternally different from you and inaccessible to you. But when you know yourself to be the one self in all, that unity, that is the very definition of virtue. That is the very gateway of love. That is the very source of true authenticity, the means for keeping it real, as it were. So why are we addicted to this thinking? In The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle is asked this question. Why should we be addicted to thinking? He says, because you're identified with it. What does that mean? You think it's your thinking. You think this thought going on in your mind belongs uniquely to you, which is ridiculous. I bet each one of us would be stunned at how many of the same thoughts we share every day, and yet we think how unique we are. It's always such a puzzle, especially in our culture, because in our culture, the unique is always so worshipped. We talk about, be a star, be unique, be yourself, be individual. And yet, you wear some crazy thing to school, you're not rewarded for it. They make fun of you, they laugh at you. So we speak a truth and then we withhold it from ourselves, And this constant contradiction is going on all the time. He says, you are addicted to this thinking because you're identified with it, which means that you derive your sense of self from the content and activity of your mind. Because you believe that you would cease to be if you stopped thinking. As you grow up, you form a mental image of who you are, and based on your personal and cultural conditioning, we may call this phantom self the ego. It consists of mind activity and can only be kept going through constant thinking. The term ego means different things to different people, but when I use it here, I mean a false self created by unconscious identification with the mind. To the ego, and this is very important, hear these words, to the ego, the present moment hardly exists. Only the past and future are considered important. This total reversal of the truth accounts for the fact that in the ego mode, the mind is so dysfunctional. It is always concerned with keeping the past alive. And get this is pinnacle here, I think anyway. It is always concerned with keeping the past alive because without it, who are you? And this is the key to being content in the moment. Let go of the story of who you are that is defining this moment as imperfect and as not enough and as lacking something. Let go of it. And this is why Thakur says faith is everything, because to let go of that, where are you going to drop to? Who knows? This idea of self. Let go of your dreams. Let go of your ideas. Let go of your hopes. Let go of your victories. Let go of your defeats. And be in the present moment, which is undefined. There's no history there to tell you the story about what it means. Just open to it. And if you don't have a past, if you don't have that story that defines the moment, you don't need the future. Because the future is only necessary to fix the present moment. And the moment only needs fixing when you apply the past to it. And we come back to that age-old truth that we've talked about many times. Why is that? Because your past is only your attachments. It's not real. Even if you and your brother grow up in the same home with almost identical histories, your presents are going to be radically different. Because you both made up a past. You grabbed certain things from it to define it. You allowed certain things inside to create this false sense of who and what you are. And those particulars will never see the perfection of the unity because they're not concerned about the unity. They're concerned about the particular, me, and how everything out there relates to that. To the ego, the present moment hardly exists. Only the past and future are considered important. This total reversal of the truth. And why is that? Because this moment is all you've got. There's only one moment. It's an eternal moment. It doesn't end and the next one begins. It's always the is. You can't get out of it. You can't bring anything into it. You can't take anything out of it. It's always here and now, and that's where you live. And that's where you find the divine, the beloved, the contentment, the dream, the hope, the love, the reality of being. Be present. Let go of the ego that defines the self, that defines this moment as imperfect and lacking, so that you're not bound to a future of trying to bring something into a place that can't have anything brought into it. It is always concerned with keeping the past alive because without it, who are you? It constantly projects itself into the future to ensure its continued survival and to seek some kind of release or fulfillment there. It stands to reason then, in Karma Yoga, Vivekananda says, that freedom, which is the goal of all the noblest aspirations of mankind, and that is, by giving up this little life, giving up this little universe, giving up this earth, giving up heaven, giving up body, giving up mind, giving up everything that is limited and conditioned. Because all of those limitations and conditions support that circle of desire, which takes you from here back to here again. It never gets you out of this moment. And if this moment isn't good enough for you, it never will be until you learn this truth, until you take this chance, until you find the courage to let go. In Luke chapter 17, Jesus says the exact same thing. On that day of realization, on that day of knowing the divine, that day of rapture, he says, on that day, no one who is on the housetop with possessions inside should go down to get them. Why? Because they're useless. On the day that you leave this world, you can't run around the house and pick up the things that you want to take with you. Can't do it. So practice that now so you're ready. Because in this moment you will die. It's not going to be a different moment from now. It's not at some point in an imagined future. The moment is always here. And in this moment you will make that departure. If in this moment you can't let go of everything that you have, let go of this small universe, this small I, on that imagined day in an imagined future, a projected idea of tomorrow, you won't be able to do it then either. You have everything you're ever going to have right now. You know everything you're going to know in the true sense of the word of knowledge now. This moment has all of the bits and pieces you need to realize the divine, to know God, to find that eternal comfort, that eternal contentment of love, of pure intelligence, and that eternal song of being. On that day, no one who is on the house step with possessions inside should go down to get them. Likewise, no one in the field should go back home for anything. Remember Lot's wife. There's a story of Lot in the Old Testament. God is destroying a town for their wickedness, and he saves one family. And so they're running off into the hills as burning fire is raining from heaven to wipe this town out. And they're all running, and God tells them, when he tells them to leave the town, he says, do not look back. So Lot's wife looks back, and she turns into a pillar of salt, it says. Turns into a statue. She becomes purely material. And Lot has to run on without. It's the same message. As you lay these things down, as you go forward in spiritual life, do not look back and long for the trash you left behind, because it only glitters in your imagination. It only glitters in the mind that takes the particular 3 seconds of pleasure that you got from it and forgets the pain that it caused. And the way that I like to remind myself of this is back in those days, and I know there's different feelings about people talking about these things, but those days when you go out on your Friday night and you drink just a little bit or a lot, too much, and you wake up the next morning, you're like, oh my God, I feel horrible. And the whole day is just, drinking orange juice and trying to recover from last night. And you're constantly saying, oh my God, I'm never going to do that again. But then on Monday, you're like, oh, I can't wait for Friday night. That's what happens when you look back without having learned the lesson that didn't give you anything meaningful. It didn't give you anything you could take with you. It didn't give you anything that lasted. It broke. It broke and it hurt you. And it took you farther away from yourself. And you'll always feel that hurt. Don't listen to the lies of the mind that constantly repeats its story to support a sense of self that's limited and particular and small and always in danger of being broken. Let go and catch a glimmer of that you that doesn't make any noise, doesn't glitter, doesn't flash, doesn't scream out, because it's content, because it's perfect, because it's eternal. And when you find that self, when you know that identity of self, the world is yours. Freedom is yours. The ability to love with equanimity, friend, foe, relation, or stranger, becomes yours. And the world will sing that story for the rest of its days, like it does for Jesus, for Buddha, for Rama, for Krishna. Those luminaries who had the courage, who learned the lessons, who paid attention, who knew who you are and loved you infinitely for it. Whoever tries to keep their life will lose it. Whoever loses their life for others will keep it. Your nature is to give, to love, to care. Do so with abandon. Nothing can be taken from you if you refuse to hold on to anything. This is how we let go of the mind. This is how we find freedom. This is the homework. Gaining that courage, really, that's where it's at. Because Mother says, and I remind myself of this many times a day, you can have your realization this very moment. And then she adds 4 words, if you want it. What is it in this moment that you want, that you think you're going to collect from another moment that doesn't exist to bring you that fulfillment? Lay down that want, and you will have. Take a few moments just to consider these things, to think about them. All right. One of the beautiful things about this place is that it exists for this, for you. And so you're, of course, always welcome to be here and to come and spend time with all the books of the prophets out there in the other room to read and inspire and to point you in the right direction, and all the time in the world to sit in your present moment and to suss out its reality is here. And then we've got Thursday night, our Kali Puja and Diwali celebration. We request that you be vaccinated and that you wear a mask. We'll have boxed prasad to take with you as you leave. Next Sunday, Swami Brahmarupananda, Swami B, is going to give us a lecture on Rama's instructions to Shabiri on pure devotion. So those things are going on here, and then the temple is open every day from 5 a.m. until roughly 10 p.m. So make it a part of your journey, and come and you know, I always like to call this place the petri dish for spiritual life. It's your opportunity to experiment on pure love with each other, on selflessness in a safe environment. Nobody's going to abuse you for it here. So you can practice that kind of generosity, that kind of loving spirit, that kind of giving with each other here. So tie in and use this place to bring you home. That's what it's here for. Any other announcements or things that need to be mentioned? All right.
The Kali Puja will begin at 7:30.
Begin at 7:30, okay. All right. So after evening meditation on Thursday, the 4th. To close with Hafiz, his poem, Crooked Deals. There is a madman inside of you who's always running for office. That's your ego. Why vote for him? For he never keeps the accounts straight. He gets all kinds of crooked deals happening all over town that will just give you a big headache and glue your kisser to a gigantic, confused frown. May God bless us all. Jai Ram. Jai Chakra.